Again, obtaining these type of pills in a matter of seconds and then having them for distribution in schools or business places. So we're talking about substances that are incredibly deadly, and we do not advocate any type of field testing for this.
You have spoken about what did not get through, what you were able to seize. Do you have any idea what percentage this represents of what did get through to the Denver area and beyond? And could you use the microphone, please?
Do you want to take that?
That is a complex question. I wish I could give you a pragmatic answer. I do. It's hard to tell because there's a lot of variables there. Number one, variables involving the border. Variables involving law enforcement detection. Variables involving supply of precursor chemicals that make these drugs. It's hard for me to speculate how much gets through. I can tell you this, we're making the best dent we can possible in the flow of drugs coming up into the state. The problem is it's so easy to secrete, so easy to hide, we have no idea. I do know this, our sources of information, our intelligence indicates an oversaturated market, which again, I haven't seen ever in 30 years. When I first started dealing with the opioid epidemic back in 2015, the advent of fentanyl as it was starting to come into the market, our undercovers were paying in between $20 to $40 a pill. We're paying $1 now. That shows you a massive shift in availability and accessibility. When the price point is that low for a deadly drug, you have a very, very, very concerning public health crisis. As DA Kellner noted, 4 out of 10 pills are considered deadly. I believe that's very conservative, especially with the overdose amounts that we're seeing right now. I wish, again, to get back to your original question, I wish that we could give you a hard and die-fast answer. The problem with the drug trade and the drug market, it literally morphs by the hour for us as we're investigating these cases. As he alluded to, and as I noted earlier, the drug cartels, in its oversaturated market, they are coming up with new and innovative means to peddle their poison. I just saw an intelligence bulletin the other day that stated they were flavoring fentanyl pills with monk fruit because they wanted something more tasty and something out there to appeal to the younger users. Raspberry, strawberry, monk fruit, stamping them with designer logos like BMW or Mercedes. Anything they can do to push their deception to the point of almost sheer lunacy. And that's what we're seeing. I've never seen, like I said, anything like it in my law enforcement career.
The $1, $2, that's bulk.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So just to underscore that real quickly, I mean, what we see in these operations now is you could potentially buy a pill on the bulk level, so we're talking 100,000 type amounts for $1 to $2, but they're retailing somewhere between $8 to $10 in the Denver metro area, and that is down from, as Brian mentioned somewhere earlier, it could have been 20 to 25, even upwards of 30 farther away from the metro area. So that is showing us the saturation. Yes, ma'am.
You said this started in December?
It did.
Why does it take so long to bring these people down?
That's a great question. So we're actually really cautious with fentanyl cases in particular, not to let drugs potentially make it out to the stream of commerce. So with these cases, when we are able to, we seize what we possibly can and then try to keep that case alive. What can often happen when you're doing an investigation like this or in any drug trafficking organization, they will drop phones and try to pick up a new means to communicate, and then you will have to try to find out what that is. That happens more frequently with fentanyl cases in my experience because of our unwillingness to let a potential seizure make its way out to the community because those are potential deaths. So this case, we initially indicted in earlier June and then had a superseding indictment, which is common practice, where you would get some more information after the last seizure or the last search warrant, and then our ultimate indictment is the 8 folks here.
Does it take a long time to get for the cell phone information?
Wiretap applications oftentimes are 100 pages long. We have very stringent legal requirements behind every single wiretap investigation. They are reviewed by a singular judge in the 18th Judicial District who reviews them very carefully. And you have to show things like there are no other ways for us to accomplish this investigation. So we have to exhaust other means before we're able to use, frankly, wiretaps to further these investigations. Sir.
John, this is for you and Brian. So given the staggering amount of fentanyl on the streets in Colorado, realistically, what effect will this seizure have on the supply of fentanyl in Colorado, the prices of fentanyl in Colorado?
It's a great question because, as Brian mentioned earlier, you are sort of taking one aspect of a cartel away or one aspect of a group, but somebody else is going to fill that role, right? And he mentioned the southern border, and frankly, I believe until that is secured better than it is now, we're going to continue to see fentanyl coming into our communities. So while I think this operation puts a temporary pause on at least this particular group that's funded by a Mexican cartel, it's not going to stop it. They will find another distributor, and we're going to continue to work on it. I wish I could say that, hey, this is going to be the end, or that bill that passed not long ago is going to end the fentanyl crisis in Colorado. It's not. Until we have greater enforcement statewide, until we have greater information sharing, infusion of intelligence across different parts of this state, I think we're not going to be able to get the biggest impact possible. And when I say greater intelligence sharing, one of the things that I didn't mention here is that this case originated from a tip out of DEA in Wyoming, right? So somebody out there said, hey, I think we've got a potential lead, and then you had to build the confidence and trust through a buy in December, and then another buy, and then hopefully build some more trust and find out what is the way that they communicate, and then start that investigation. What we need more of in the state of Colorado is investigative leads that are shared across districts. And I don't just say judicial districts or different regions, but there is easily a drug trafficking organization network that we could potentially get a lead on out of, let's say, Mesa County. What we lack in the state is what I call a fusion center, where we take the intelligence from all these different groups that are running in sometimes siloed information networks to share it across and have some statewide enforcement.
Can I just
Yeah.
follow up? So just again, not to detract from the apparent success of this operation, is it fair to say that the effect would be sort of minimal?
Now, I won't say it's minimal. Absolutely not. Because each one of these pills is potentially a life saved. All right? And in many ways, I think the extent of the overdose crisis from this is masked by the presence and prevalence of Narcan, which can reverse the effects, and which I'll guarantee you these gentlemen here will tell you that their officers and deputies are probably administering Narcan on a daily basis out there. So each one of these is potentially a life saved, and I won't call that minimal.
And then just lastly, would you agree that the long-term solution to this crisis is to reduce demand?
We need demand enforcement in terms of treatment. I guess enforcement's not the right word. We need to address the demand side of it. We always have had the need to address the demand side of any drug. Here in the 18th Judicial District, we do a lot on that aspect, where we have problem-solving courts for people that struggle with addiction, where we try to get people that are really addicted the wraparound support and services they need. But oftentimes they're not ready. They're not ready to accept that lifeline or that helping hand. Certainly we need to address demand, but absolutely we need to turn the spigot off from the southern border.
Let me complement that answer too. America has an insatiable appetite for drugs. We do. The demand, the transnational criminal organizations just create the supply. That's a fact. That's a sad fact. Like I said, we live in a pill for every ill society. Americans only consist of roughly 5% of the world's population, yet we use well over, I think 90%, 99% of the world's hydrocodone supply. We have an insatiable appetite for drugs in this country. But I do want to dispel a notion here. We as Americans get into this little bubble where we view the cartels as way down there. They're way across the border. They're not here. Got a news flash for you. They're here. The cartel members that I think of as a DEA guy look like me. They're in downtown Denver. They run shell corporations, and they funnel millions of dollars back to Sinaloa, or back to Mexico, or back to whatever country is of origin. They use pragmatic business sense. They shifted away from cultivation and exploitation of organic plant-based drugs like heroin and cocaine, because you need hectares and hectares of land. You need lots of farmers and workers. You need to try to pay people off to avoid law enforcement detection. That all into me producing millions and millions of pills in a room this size with a chemist, a few machines, and some precursor chemicals. Think about that for a minute. I can totally evade law enforcement detection and make twice as much money with the least amount of overhead or problem. That is the shift that we've seen in the drug war right now. And to get back to your question, I want to answer it this way. This is a business. Cartels are multi-billion-dollar businesses. They outgun us, they outman us, they outtech us, they can outmove us, and many times they can outsmart us. They have the resources and the manpower. We're the thin blue line, so to speak, that holds us back from just total chaos. Interesting thing about the cartels is they pay attention to where it is profitable to do business. If you can drive up and down Colorado roadways without being detected, they're going to do so. If you can deal your drugs in the 18th Judicial District without being arrested, they will do so, because they make it a point to look at a map and decide where they're going to deploy their drugs. We are trying to cultivate an environment that is not productive for them. This sounds horrible, but I mean this. I want them to go someplace else. We don't want them in Colorado. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you both identified that these drugs are coming from Mexico. Could you just detail how the situation at the southern border is contributing to this situation? And then also, the drugs are coming to Mexico, to my understanding, from China. Could you discuss what that process looks like and who they're interfacing with in China on that side of the equation?
Sure. So I don't want to jump into a political tinderbox here. I will say this. Open borders, open prices. When you have free exchange and free trafficking, the cartels capitalize on that. There's nothing to stop them. That is why we have an oversaturated market right now. The market is oversaturated because we can, okay? We're talking about precursor chemicals coming from China, from India. Those are used to manufacture. The transnational criminal organizations like the cartels are getting smart because they don't want to pay for those chemicals either. They're going to start manufacturing the chemicals themselves, and they're already starting to do that. At first, they were dependent on precursor chemicals coming from Far East Asia, from overseas, and now the Chinese government, much to the work that we've done over there diplomatically, has started to regulate and control a lot of the production of these chemicals. But you got to remember, China is a huge country, right? Massive country with states and provinces in there that are even very hard to police. So we can't stop it completely, but they're starting to see the toll that is taken, especially from on a diplomatic angle. So the cartels are like, you know what, we don't even need you. We're going to start making precursor chemicals or pre-precursor chemicals or pre-precursor chemicals. You get the idea here. They're going to chase it all the way down the rabbit hole to get what they need to develop and make their poison because it is so incredibly profitable. So incredibly profitable. And so that's where we stand today. I underscore, the cartels are here. They make it their business. And number two, we give them the business. America has an insatiable appetite for drugs. Yes, ma'am.
This question is for Special Agent Besser. Can you tell me how many of the DEA Denver's cases are prosecuted in partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
So that is a very good question. We are working aggressively with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I think it's also an astute observation that the lion's share of our cases right now here in the Colorado area or the greater Denver area are in the state system. If you want further details on those numbers, you're going to have to consult with the U.S. Attorney. Thank you.
Can you put this seizure into context? I think in the media advisory, it said it's one of the largest in Colorado history. Could you have any more specifics
Yeah,
than that?
I think what they're talking about there is the 200,000 pills in this particular operation. So in December of last year, early December, we had a press conference, a lot of similar people with the DEA, another very successful bust, and that resulted in 110,000 pills. And at the time, there were a lot of headlines. Wow, 100,000 pills. This one eclipsed our last effort. We, frankly, until the seizure, that pure fentanyl, saw this pill seizure as one of the largest that we've had in the state so far, in a single case.
Just to clarify, Carla Vasquez, she's being charged with child abuse as well.
That is a misdemeanor charge. And again, an indictment is just an allegation.
And she was the individual that was arrested at the apartment in Aurora.
So this particular individual, I can't tell you where she was arrested specifically. I don't recall that.
At her store.
This is at the store, so at the money remitter business
Money
in
remitter
Denver.
business.
Yes.
And can you just go over the totals again to sort of slower the
You bet.
heroin, the coke,
Yeah.
the guns?
So roughly 200,000 fentanyl pills, 9.4 pounds of heroin, 1 kilo of cocaine, 4 guns, and approximately $60,000 in stolen merchandise.
And please note the poly drug exposure there. Again, we're seeing in the media this concept of just pills, pills, pills. We have a whole smorgasbord of drugs in this case. And that's an indicator of how the cartels and how criminal networks move. They're not interested in just one. They are literally the Baskin-Robbins assortment of flavors. They're willing to peddle anything that makes money. Like I said, I can't underscore the prevalence of methamphetamine right now. It's huge. It's big. It's a staple. It has not gone anywhere. It hasn't shifted in years in the West. Meth is still very much king in a lot of our rural areas. However, the market has become so oversaturated with pills, we're now starting to see, like I said, an overshadowing or an eclipse of drugs that I never thought I would see shift. But as you can see, cocaine is still alive, marijuana is still alive. The issue with marijuana that concerns me, especially in this state, is the fact that we are starting to see marijuana adulterated with drugs. And many teens or people that are using it in an unsuspecting manner that think, hey, natural herb, I'm going to smoke it, and they don't realize that it's been adulterated. So we have to be very, very careful. We just had an instance in Park City, Utah, which we cover that area as well, where they just seized some fentanyl-laced marijuana, and we've seen it show up in other conventional drugs. So it's everywhere.
How
To be
many-
clear, you're talking about illegal marijuana, right?
Well, of course, yeah. Yeah, of course, yep.
How many people arrested?
8.
They've all been arrested.
8 individuals. There's one person who was recently arrested in Wyoming who's not here yet, but in the process of
8
bringing that
arrested.
individual. Yeah.
And then how much cash?
In this particular case, let me see here. Darcy, do you have that number off the top of
We
your
don't
head?
have the total number yet, we're still working on that part of the investigation.
Yeah. One of the reasons we put that picture up there from what was found inside the money remitter business is to show, frankly, how it's not just a cash business. There's a lot of trading of other types of things too. Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think you missed the one part too. It
Oh,
was,
sorry.
2 firearms, 1 pistol, and 1 AR style.
So 4 guns.
Yeah. There's 4 guns altogether.
4 guns. Yeah, 4 guns.
If we were to take into account how many pills, 114 pounds of pure fentanyl powder could be pressed into, I don't even think I could enumerate that right now. And the reason we kind of married those two issues up in this press conference is to show you, again, the local import of these type of cases. These cases are huge community impact cases because it reverberates through the criminal community. They see this and they do not want their money being taken away. They do want their drugs being confiscated. There's a cost of doing business there, but I can assure you there's also a price to pay. They do not mess around. But when we take a look at the upside of that, this national story now with 114 pounds coming up Colorado roadways, that would be pressed into millions and millions and millions of pills, which continue to saturate the market and threaten our way of life.
One thing I would like to address on the part of law enforcement is a lot of people think that this is a Denver-only problem or a urban problem. It is not. We are seeing deaths in Douglas County, in Arapahoe County. This is a statewide problem, and we are going to continue to work with our local district attorney's office, with our federal partners to prosecute these people. But it's important for people to know that in our suburban communities, in Highlands Ranch, in Roxborough, we are seeing these drugs. And this is a daily battle. These parents need to pay attention. This is getting into our schools. So please just be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, All right. Any last questions? All right, well, thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate it. We'll stand by here on the side if anybody has any questions off the side. Thank you.
Thank you.
How much meth was on this?